So in this video I'm going to show you how to draw a tree, a realistic tree from your own imagination, and I'm going to do it using this ballpoint pen. And I'm using this because it's easy to obtain. It's not a specialist piece of kit. Everybody's got a ballpoint pen at home, or at least should have. They're ubiquitous, so it's a cheap and accessible piece of kit. Doesn't require you to break the bank to get it. Cheap as chips, no frills. So ballpoint pen, and this is just a 3B pencil, which I will use to render somewhat. I won't be going overboard with the rendering, I will just be suggesting form. So the first thing I do is I trace out roughly what I call my envelope. So I'm just getting an idea of the size and the scope of what I want. And I'm mindful that I don't want to make this too symmetrical. So I want a little bit of asymmetry coming in here. So I'm going to try and work in this envelope here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to think, right, okay, I'm looking at the skeleton of the tree that I'm going to draw, and I'm going to have a slightly diagonal thrust here like this. I'm going to push a branch out here like that, but the main thing is here is I want to get a gestural line that connects the whole tree. I think this is good. I'm putting a bend on it so it's organic. Don't want this to just be straight vertical. So that's the gestural line. This is the main line on which I'll base the entire drawing. So I don't want this to be too stiff. I think that's loose enough. It's nice and loose. There's a little bit of bend there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I've got this branch coming out here. I'm going to put a branch here, curve it up here like that. I'm going to put one coming out just a little bit underneath. What you don't want is two branches on the same level, on the same height. It looks unnatural. I'm going to push that out here. I've just pushed beyond the envelope, no worries. I'm just feeling around here. I'm not committing to anything. I'm keeping the drawing open and flexible. So there's another branch that I will put in. Might bring one down here like this. Okay. So this is going to be my trunk. And these are going to be my branches. I'm probably going to put in another. Yeah, this is going to be, because this is the main gestural line, I'm going to make this my main branch coming through here. And I might do a branch coming off here. Yeah, that makes sense. So one thing that you need to do when you're drawing trees is to make sure there's a balance. So I can't load up this side and have nothing here. So I'm going to try and balance this. I'm always feeling around to get the balance when I'm doing these drawings. You notice I'm keeping the lines quite the bendy, organic diagonals. I'm not pushing strict verticals and horizontals. Everything has an organic bend to it. So this is the skeleton, what I call the skeleton of the tree. So the main line, the whole drawing rests on this line here, the main gestural line, and these radiating lines coming out here are the skeleton. So I've mapped out a straightforward, fairly simple skeleton, just so I've got an idea of where I'm going. It's like a map, all right? So now what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to put the tree in. So this is going to start to be the trunk here. Try not to be too scratchy with it. So I want this fairly thick. You notice I'm not drawing straight lines, I'm bending it and I'm trying to imply organic forms. So here I'd probably say this would be maybe a bit of ivy on the side, perhaps. And always remember that this is a three-dimensional form. So it's got a bend in it. Remember that, because it helps when you come to render. These are basically cylinders connected to each other. Always remember that. Forget that at your peril. You'll start to lose form. You'll start to lose an appreciation of the form. And you'll lose that clarity when you come to render. So you notice I'm now aggressively tapering. So you can see here, this tapers a little bit. Tapering is when I look at beginners and people that don't have a lot of experience with drawing, I notice they don't taper properly. Branches go out and they get fatter, which is a real problem. If you want to give that impression of realism, you have to taper. And you have to taper aggressively everywhere. Otherwise, it, like I say, it just doesn't look real. So you notice I'm not obeying the skeleton precisely. I'm not using it as a, I'm not clinging to it in a needy way. I'm just using it as a guide, a nice light guide going forward. I'm going to bring a branch down here, just a thinner one, and then I'm going to flick this up. So yeah, just suggestions at the moment, nothing concrete. And let's not forget that this is still a sketch. This is not a drawing. This is just feeling around. I might want to put this in a watercolor painting or something like that. So I've got an idea of a form. Now, I really recommend you go out and you draw trees yourself. I've built up a knowledge over the years. I've drawn so many trees, some of them just sketches, some of them just parts of trees, looking just at, say, texture. And you put it all together and you build up a mental library of everything that you do. And when you come to draw a tree from your imagination, you've got things to rest on. It's like figure drawing. Trees are the figure drawing of nature, of landscapes. I think it's a very good analogy. It's true. Trees are indeed that organic gestural form that you find in the landscapes. And if you lose that gestural form, the tree becomes stiff and unnatural. And that's what I always try to avoid, is getting the tree too stiff, making it too illustrative. This is not an illustration, this is a sketch. So fluidity is a virtue here, keeping everything fluid. Discipline, yes. Proportion, yes, of course, but fluidity is the key. It's the name of the game. So I'll bring some branches down here off this branch. Another one poking out here. This bend here is not particularly, it's not particularly engaging, but we'll go with it. So I'm just working around. You've got to understand, when you do this from your imagination and you're making it up as you go along, you can get a case where you literally don't see the wood for the trees. And pun intended, it's just you pull back and you realise that you've gone too busy, too noisy in some areas, and some areas have overrun and you've lost the shape, which is why I put the envelope in first very lightly, just so that you're on a safer wicket, if you like. So this is the main dominant line, which I'm thickening up a touch. And as you can see, I'm just tapering it, just making sure it's tapered. This is going to come across this now. I do like it when this happens. Now you notice it's a good lesson. This is thicker than this. That's a problem. So I've got to really sort this out now. Might thicken this up a touch. So you thicken one thing up, you have to thicken the rest up, and then you've got to make sure that you don't lose the tapering effects. Because like I say, the tapering is the realism. It's part of the realism. An aggressive tapering does hint at that realism. So it's overloaded this side. It's a little bit empty this side, but I'm not that concerned. I'm not worried about that too much, because I know I can fill all this in with detail, which I'll show you later on. Some of these, that's a little bit, needs a bit thickened up a little bit. So you're constantly going in and thickening things up. Bring this down a bit more, like that. And I want to ground this. I want it believable as a form. And like I say, I'm just making things up here. I'm just suggesting things. There is not a hard and fast rule. The best thing you can do, of course, obviously, is to draw the real thing. But I'm just doing this as a demo, using your knowledge, what knowledge you've got, to just suggest a tree form. So that's the main drawing put in here. Don't want to put too many branches in because it will just get a little bit too busy. I've got that coming off there. Might put another branch here. Might overlap that. Yeah, I like this when I'm overlapping. I do like this. Lost a bit of the taper in there. That's thicker than this ever so slightly, so thicken this up again. And you might be thinking, why am I doing this in pen? I'm doing this in pen because there's no going back. You can't rub out. It's indelible. So you have to live with it. You have to live with what you've done. And that puts pressure on you. It forces you to think. It forces you to realise that every line counts. And it's of great importance to spend time thinking about what it is that you're doing. When you work with pencil, just with pencil, and you've got a rubber handy, you start getting sloppy. Start getting a little bit sloppy, and you get timid because you can be very scratchy with things like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to suggest I'm going to have a light coming from this direction. No particular reason, I just need a direction of light now, because I'm now thinking I've got in a rough shape, it looks all right, it's reasonably organic. I'm going to start thinking about form. And like I said to you, this is just a series of cylinders piled on top, connected to each other. That's all it is. And now I'm going to suggest some light logic. Light logic has to be coherent. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just putting down outlines of shadows. I'm thinking about making this light, from this light coming across here. I'm thinking about it, and I'm just feeling around to see if it can actually work. I think it can. So remember the forms, cylinders, you're rendering cylinders, interconnected cylinders, one to the other. And these little shapes here, I'm going to be a smarty pants and imply to the viewer that there's another tree here off the page that the light's catching and projecting branch shadows on here to make this more interesting. So I've mapped out some tone there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rendering this just using contours, and I'm doing this deliberately so you remember the form, because it's very easy to get caught up in drawing and forget the form. You must never forget the form, because it's essentially the thing that you're trying to capture at the end. Now it might be a mass, as in you're looking at doing a mass drawing more than anything else, but there's still form. You still have to imply form. There's no easy way of getting around it. Now as I put these trunks here, I'm going to suggest contours. So I'm suggesting form now, turns of form, but I also want to suggest contours now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, that's going to be a contour here, like that. And I'm going to keep this light, and I'm going to filter out the contour. This is a knot, so it's going to have an occlusion shadow in there. I don't know that because I'm observing. I know it because I know the form, and I know there's a little hole in the knot, and that is where it will keep the light out. So doing these contours here like this. So a lot of this is done by just using your brain, using a bit of logic. Okay, that's coming out there. Contours again. So I'm starting to suggest form and contours. Now I've just introduced this because it's just what I see when the trunks come out. They kind of go down into these roots. It just gives an organic feel. There's nothing particularly brilliant about doing this. It's just from observation when I go out. So, like I keep saying, cylinders. Might put a knot in here as well, just a bit of texture, bit of interest. So keep that curved form, keep that cylindrical discipline throughout. You're staying faithful to the form. Like so. And these are going to be occlusion shadows as well in here. So I'm just going back in just to give that implication, and they're going to fizzle out there. Right, now I want this in shadow here, so I'm going to hatch this again. Suggested the contours, but I'm going to hatch this again. what I might do is just speed this up a little bit, just imply a bit of tone in here. Still see the contour marks, they're still there, they're still giving the viewer the implication of the form. So I'm just going to drop this in shadow, all of it. Right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the shadow up here, connect it. What I try to do with shadows is connect them all. I don't like bitty shadows everywhere. Really, it is a bugbear of mine, because it breaks up the form and it means that the eye hovers around trying to find something to latch on, and it's got all these shadows vying for attention, which is not what I want. Right. Again, cylinder logic, get that turn, suggest that form, suggest the shape, contours, always contours. It keeps it real, keeps the form real in your mind. Now, simply by darkening this, I immediately push this back. And if I was to overlap this, then obviously it would jump in front. So things sit behind, depending on how fully you render and if you overlap. Overlaps are so important. Again, I'm just going to render this again without going too dark, because I don't want to fight this. Okay. I'm going to go in here, darken this up. Like that. Okay. So you just got to keep in your mind, where's the light coming all the time? Where's the light coming? Where's the light hitting? What's dropping into shadow? Gonna put a little bend on here. Again, keep that cylindrical logic going. Shadow in here. Because this is a sketch, you're not going to be rendering to the nth degree. You're going to be trying to just suggest things. And so long as the form retains its logic, we're not looking for every branch to be suggested. All right, so the trunk and the branches that are coming out, starting to take shape now a little bit. So if the light's coming from here, this is going to be in shadow. A bit thin to start messing around, suggesting cylindrical form. There's enough marks here, cross contour marks and things. I can bring this down here. There's enough there to suggest the form, the outline of the form. So let's go back into this branch here. So one side has to be toned. One side definitely has to be toned. And again, I'm being a bit of a smart aleck and suggesting shadows from another tree in the distance. Cylindrical form, keeping that going. Keep suggesting without making it too busy, just build it up nice and gentle. Put a turn on here. Put a turn on here. Go the other way. You're just trying to tell the viewer, look, this is a set of cylinders effectively, that's the form. And I'm telling you this because that's what it is. It's a bunch of cylinders with texture. Sometimes lots of texture. Sometimes so much texture it's would take hours to render and suggest. So I'm hatching this again over the contours. Just pushing this back a little bit into shadow. And again, I've got another overlap like this, so that's good. Because of the contrast, this sings, so I'm going to push this contrast a bit more. So overlaps. Be very careful because, like I say, with pen, there's no going back. It is what it is. You sometimes you've just got to live with bad lines, and that's why drawing with pen, using a pencil as a guideline, but drawing with pen puts you on your mettle, really does. There's no going back. You can override, you can override the pen marks, but there's no going back most of the time. You just have to think really hard before you put down each line. And what it does over time is it gives you a really confident, decisive drawing style. And that just looks so much better because you're confident. You just look confident all the time. Your drawings always look confident and bold. Whereas if you're just using pencil and rubber, your drawings can look kind of timid and hesitant. And if you're hesitant and timid about your own work, well, the viewer is not going to be convinced by your vision. Whereas if your vision is decisive, if it's bold, then you're going to say to the viewer, look, this is my vision, this is my confident vision. They're more likely to be attracted by that. There's a comfort, there's an attractiveness in confidence in being bold. So the one place you can really go awry is light logic. And I'm trying to be consistent. I'm just trying to stay consistent with light logic. Just hatching this again. Yeah, so light logic, you've got to be thinking about where's the light coming, what's in shadow, map it out beforehand like I've done to stop you walking into obvious problems, and then you go for it. You might get to a point where you'll be able to do this without even thinking about it. Light logic will just come naturally to you, and it helps if you go out and analyze the forms. So I'm trying to suggest lots of things here just from my imagination. I'm trying to suggest form and texture and contour. I'm trying to do a lot of things here, but it's all very helpful because it all counts. And when I say go out and draw trees, I don't just mean go out and draw trees, the whole tree. Take a little part of it. Take a bit of bark draw the bark, learn about the texture, learn about how intricate the texture is. Don't just go out and draw the tree. Don't just go out and sketch the tree as it stands. Sketch the detail, sketch the texture, pick parts of it, come back the next day, study something else of it, and you, like I say, you'll build up a library, a mental map in your mind of textures, forms, how branches overlap one another. So get in there slowly but surely. I'll keep going back in and I keep strengthening shadows, because I know the light's coming from here. I know this has to be a dark turn. And I know this is an occlusion shadow here. And it will thicken up as you get to the base. Again, that's another thing you pick up. Little things like that make it more believable. You're not going to get it bang on, but you're going to be able to suggest something that looks believable. Then you're on the right path. Work this a bit more. And I would honestly put the arrow in. A lot of atelier students do it. I really advise you do it. Do it in all your drawings, even just faint. You might not be able to see that actually on the camera, but there is an arrow there. So I generally do that sometimes when I'm doing these studio drawings. When I'm outdoors, I don't bother. I just draw it as it is, because nature is holding my hand and telling me where the light's coming from and what's in shadow and what isn't. So nature is helping me in that sense. So now comes the time where start adding more detail. And I'm going to really start to push this a little bit. And this is a time when you've built on firm ground. You can now start doing more of the fine work. I'm going to suggest some texture. Again, more texture, just suggesting, just telling, just suggesting. Going to have some little twigs poking out here. Again, this untidiness, this messiness adds a great deal of organic energy to the drawing. Little scraps, little bits. Make the tree look a bit shaggy, but it's all good. You notice how I'm just scribbling these in. I'm not trying to overdo this. I'm not trying to be too clever with this. I'm just suggesting. These are scribbles, what I call organised chaos, that just trick the viewer into thinking, wow, this is detailed. Yes, it looks that way, but it really isn't. And with the cylinder, you've always got that you've got that streak of light around the middle. So I'm just emphasising that now. Like that. And one of the things that you must not do is get carried away with this and start putting in all kinds of scribbles, because it will just look a mess. And when I say organised chaos, I really mean you're controlling chaotic line work to suggest detail, to suggest all these little twigs coming off the branches and whatnot. And they tend to get more dense around the edges, so you kind of load up on the frequency around the edges. What I tend to do is get this in first and build up in layers and get really scribbly towards the end. Without trying to be too busy. I'm aware that I'm overloading this side compared to this side, but it will all come together. You can trust me on that one. See the envelope still coming into play. You can see the envelope roughly, I've adhered to it. It keeps me in check. It means if I start getting carried away and start putting in loads of twigs and whatnot and foliage or whatever, I don't go out of the envelope too much and end up making this look really unnatural and unbalanced. What you don't want is an unbalanced looking tree where there's lots of activity on one side, lots of weight. Tone is weight, remember. You don't want that too much because it just won't look believable. You'll be having to suspend disbelief. You'll be having to look at the drawing and thinking, well, if that was in real life, it just wouldn't stand because it's so unbalanced. There's just too much weight on one side. And whilst this is just an interpretation, or this is just a complete illusion, if you like, from my imagination, you still have to make it believable in a gravity sense. You still have to say, look, if this was actually real, it would still stand. It's not going to collapse because it's too lopsided. You can still see the main line. It gets a bit difficult to see now, but that's the line that I've built this entire drawing on. It's still there. It's still going strong. It owns the drawing. And that's the main thing. I'm coming out here. Just going to get this left hand side now, sorry, right hand side now. I'm just going to try and keep this, just put a bit of life around here, add a few branches, because it's starting to look a little bit unbalanced. I'm neglecting my right hand side. So I'm going to show you some love, show you a bit of love. And as you notice, I'm nonchalantly just whacking these in. I'm suggesting, I'm not trying to describe. These are suggestions. I'm going to connect that because that doesn't look like it's connected because it's tonally different. And I'm going to just darken that there a little bit. Right. Yeah, it can get a little bit messy in here, but I've been trying to do several things at once. I've been trying to do contours to suggest the form. Because this is a drawing from imagination, it's very easy to lose the form. And if you lose the contour, it just means there's more chance of you looking silly when you start to put the light logic in and the shadows. It probably won't be internally consistent. And viewers will see that, and you won't be able to say to them, look, this is what this is what a realistic light and shadow looks like, because it just will look off. So that's where the contours come in to really help you out. So I use fine liners when I'm out in nature, when I'm out drawing direct from nature. I will use fine liners. Love my fine liners. Sometimes use 1, 2, possibly 3, if I'm looking for real disciplined drawing, but never more than 3 pens. But I'm doing this in just a ballpoint, just a standard Staedtler ballpoint, because it's easy. You know, I know this is something that you're going to have at home. You don't need all the fancy pen. So hatching this again. Do like to make sure it's connected. Just want to separate light and tone, mid-tone. The ground is always a tone, half a tone at the very least, darker than the sky, so I want that separation. So now this feels grounded, it's a bit more grounded, and the roots are stretching out here. So it feels a little bit more grounded. Starts to get a bit more believable. Tapering here is not terrible, it's okay, does the job. But it's just showing you some simple principles if you decide to draw trees or any kind of organic forms from your imagination. It's just about conceding that it's not going to look perfect. It's just if you capture the essential essence of the form that you're drawing, that's the main takeaway here. And if you were to add this to a landscape, you'd think, yeah, it looks like a tree. Looks believable. That's the greatest compliment you can get. So I'm still got this envelope here. Like I say, it's not a hard boundary. It's just a guide to stop you going too far wrong. Stop you going way off. I've done trees in the past and I've been so enamored with doing details that I've run kind of close to be off the page. So I've got lots of information here and nothing here, and the tree looks out of balance and just looks wrong, just looks unnatural. And the one thing we're trying to do here is push natural forms. This is a natural form, and hence we've got to really push that in. Bring this down a bit more here. Let's have another branch coming off here. Let's kind of get this a bit more busy. Start to oppose just how loaded it is on the left hand side. Just trying to offset that. I'm going to push a little bit, just take a step back. I'm just going to push this side here a little bit further out, just for asymmetry. I just want to create a bit of asymmetry, kind of give a little push out here, whilst retaining the form in that envelope. Yeah, so just remember where that light's coming from again. Don't lose track of the light. Don't lose track of the direction of the light. Because if you do, this can all crash down very quickly. Yeah, this is a bit, so there's empty parts here. So I want a little bit of information in here. I don't want this to be too quiet. I don't want too little detail in here. I want something. So I'm making up some more branches just to fill these areas up a little bit, because like I say, I just want a little bit of activity here. Connect that up a little bit. All right. So this is an incredibly challenging exercise, as you'll probably be aware, but it's one of those, it's a tremendously rewarding exercise because it's like a test. It's a test of your ability to keep light logic without any external help. And if you can do that, then you've internalized light logic. That's a great skill to have, because sometimes when you're out sketching, and even when you're out painting, you lose the scene a little bit. You might get light change very quickly, so you have to remember, you have to think, hang on a minute, what was the light like back then when the clouds come over? And if you can use your mind's eye, you can use that powerful ability, you can rescue work when you lose that external help. And it can be it's a really great thing to have. A number of times I've been out, I've done a value sketch and I've lost the light. Whatever the light was at the time that attracted me to draw paint, I've lost it. And I'm like, disaster. But nowadays I can just kind of use my common sense, use my knowledge of light logic, box logic if you like, and just render using constructive forms. And you're not gonna always get it right. There's going to be problems at times where you get the light logic wrong, but most of the time you can get away with it. Right. So this, filled these areas in a bit more, put a little bit in here. Like I say, I work it in layers, so skeleton to form, to basic form and outline, then start suggesting some of the twigs on the outside, then build up internally. And now what I'm going to do is I'm now going to increase the density around here. I'm just going to put a few more branches in here, just a few more. But that's the next stage. It's kind of like the icing on the cake of the painting or the drawing when you do it. But if you were painting, this should be a lot of work. A lot of work. You'd have to use a very fine brush and have a lot of patience on you. Which is why, as a watercolourist, you think, thank God for dry brush, you can just suggest foliage and texture, and you can put a little bit of branches, or you can put a few branches in, but then you can mainly scratch a bit of dry brush across and suggest foliage. So all the time I'm thinking about containment around here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to do what I call my organised, this is my organised chaos. Sounds a contradiction in terms, and no doubt is, but I think you get what I mean. I'm controlling the chaos around here. I'm just squiggling. Is that a word? It is now. Just making sure I don't want to be too rigid with staying in the envelope. So I'm just making sure the density of detail is there. And trees are messy. They don't sit within perfect lines. They don't conform to boundaries. But it's a good idea just to have it, just in case, like I say, you overshoot. So here's my controlled scribbling. People go, wow, that's detailed. And not really, it's just a scribble. It's just a load of scribbles. So I'm starting to build up frequency around here. Controlled scribbles. And make sure that it is dispersed, so you're going from dense to less dense around here, around the central areas. And there will be patches that are incredibly dense, like that. A few more scribbles coming out of here. And let's work up around here. So just imagine that's a boundary there. And work within that. Again, scribbles. Don't want to be too fancy with this. So yeah, it's a great test, a great exercise to do. Because like I say, it tests your understanding of the form itself. If you can do this from your imagination, then it's so much easier when you go out and you try to draw a tree, even though they can be quite intimidating because they can be quite complicated forms. It's just so much, it's just a real confidence booster. So yeah, I'm just getting enough information in there. Remembering that I can't make this inner areas too busy, but I do want enough information in there so that there's no areas that are just completely blank. There's a little bit of blank here, but that's all right. It's not terrible. It's not a big deal. Drop another branch off there and another one here. And yes, you're just making it up as you go along. That's the entire point. The key thing is that you follow the principles. Follow the principles and work from them as a core. Because if you don't, it's very easy to get lost and end up losing your drawing. It's an easy thing to do. Yeah, so I'm keeping that there like that. I'm just going to keep this quite messy. Scribbles, nice and light scribbles. Upward thrusts with the little branches, with the little twigs. Shows a nice organic texture to it. Control chaos. Can get quite absorbing doing all this, but sometimes you just got to say, well, I've done what I can do. So that's a rough outline, and it's a reasonable sketch from my imagination. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to suggest a little bit of tone, just where there might be a build-up of foliage on the outside. It reinforces the boundary as well for the drawing. Just light, it's a 3B pencil. I'm just suggesting just that little bit of forward. I'm just giving that bit of weight on the outside, and it also provides us a separator between what would be the sky and the foliage, or the masses of twigs together would form that little bit of weight, bit of density, bit of value. So now we've established form, go back in and maybe push a little bit. Like that. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. So that's a tree drawn from my imagination using straightforward principles, the gestural organic line going through. That is the line you base your drawing on. Putting in the skeleton, which is the branches coming out, coming from the main dominant line, the gestural line. And all these lines again are gestural. They swing, they're organic. The diagonals, they've got bends in. There's no real harshness. There's no hard angular cuts. Maybe a little here, but it all fits together. Then you start rendering, you start putting your light logic. You have a direction of light, and you can make this up as you want. You make up the light. You could have it coming from the top right, top left, bottom right, wherever you want it to come, straight on. From behind, it could be a contre-jour, whichever way you want to do it. But make sure, whichever direction of light, it's consistent. You have to be consistent. And once I've got the light logic in, I then start articulating the branches a little bit more. And then you've just seen me put in pretty much quick scribbles just to fool the eye that this is actually all detail, which it isn't. So there you go, a tree from your imagination, using just a simple few principles, using nothing more than a bog standard ballpoint pen and a 3B pencil. That's it. So have a crack at home. This is just cartridge paper. It's bog standard paper, cheap. So the materials are cheap, and you can have a crack at this. So you don't need all these expensive materials and whatnot. You can just use the principles that I've shown in this video and go for it. So I hope you found that helpful and informative, and have a crack yourself. See what you can do. All right, thanks for watching.